All right, everybody. Today is June 15th. I am Evan Husney. Welcome to the Power Comics YouTube channel. Just a quick announcement today before we get into the unboxing video, as it's such a milestone day for us here at Power Comics. Today marks the release date of our first ever comic book. Okay, we are, if you've been living under a rock, we've partnered with Floating World Comics out of Portland, Oregon to re-release some of our favorite Power Comics from the 80s and 90s. And today is the release date of our very first release. All right, and I can't think of a book more appropriate to start with to be out there back into the world than Lance Stanton, Wayward Warrior. This is a book we've talked about a lot on the channel before. It's consistently blown our minds. Anyway, moving on. Oh!
Beefcake shot.
God. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. Most notably, it was also part of the inaugural Power Comics 2021 Hall of Fame class. Doesn't get any bigger than that. Lance Stanton!
Yes! 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 Oh, baby. What a night. What a night.
And this is an absolute dream come true for us to be even tangentially related to the release of this book, the re-release of this book. So if you'd like to order a copy, and it's available now, it's just $6.99. And there's a link here in the description to Floating World's website where you can order that now. Or you can order the deluxe bundle, which this is unbelievable. It comes with a limited edition signed and numbered print, okay, painted by our very own Benjamin Marra, who did his own rendering of Lance Stanton, and it's absolutely fucking incredible. So both of those are available now. Links in the description. Anyway, we're going to unbox this son of a bitch, so stay tuned. See you on the other side. All right, everybody, and welcome to the Power Comics YouTube channel. Here for a very special unboxing video. I am Evan Husney, joined, of course, to my right by a special Power celebrity here. He is the artist behind one of our favorite Power Comics of all time. This is Mr. Dave Bamford. Please welcome him, the artist behind Lance Stanton #1. Dave, welcome back. How you doing?
I'm doing just fine.
Awesome, awesome. Thanks for being here, man. This is an epic day. Because we are unboxing the Power Comics reprint of Lance Stanton #1. That's right. If you've been living under a rock, Power Comics has powered up and partnered with Floating World Comics out of Portland, Oregon, and we're republishing our favorite DIY self-published comics from the 80s. And Lance Stanton is the first one-shot comic that we are republishing, and the first ever Power Comic, official Power Comic release that will actually hit stores, as Lance Stanton will be available. I think it's shipping in early June 8th, I believe. So if you want to pre-order that right now, get in the description of this video. There's a link to do so. So Dave, how you feeling about this? Because it's 32 years ago you published this book, and now it's coming back out again. Did you ever think that would ever happen?
Well, I was quite surprised that somebody even discovered a copy of Lance Stanton, but it wasn't very widely distributed, and it's quite rare. So,
that's right.
And so I was stunned by that, and then having somebody come along and saying, "We want to publish this," and I'm like, "Really? Cool."
Yeah, what was your reaction when we hit you with that news of let's put this back out there again?
Well, I didn't know quite what to make of it, because I wasn't quite, I wasn't familiar with you folks at all, obviously. Sure. But then, when I dove into Power Comics, and I says, oh, okay, now I get this. This is rare, esoteric stuff.
Right.
It's amateur hour, but there's a level of respect, even though it's not polished. It's not totally professional.
Yeah.
It's just people doing some passion projects, and you folks out there appreciate that. So, I'm all on board.
Yeah, there's something about, there's obviously a charm to it, but it's also there's a tangible sincerity in the books that we appreciate here at Power Comics, where you guys you loved comic books, and you wanted to. Obviously, there was a black and white boom, with the success of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, that it opened the doors for, to do it yourself, and that yielded a lot of what I guess you would say amateur, DIY self-publishing. But the fact that it's rough around the edges, the fact that it's not Marvel, it's not DC, it's homemade, and it has this very tactile quality to it. And even if it's a little off kilter, there's sort of a really cool quality of discovering that. Now, it's kind of like Steve McCardle of, who did the Vendetta Holy Vindicator series. He put it best. It's like a band's demo tape. It's like when you discover those early demo recordings that are rougher and cooler and more imaginative than, say, something more polished. And I think that's kind of an apt way to describe what we like here at Power Comics. But Lance Stanton, for all the reasons we've discussed on this channel before, checks all the boxes for us. It's a singular vision in terms of, the writing and I know you were under a lot of duress in terms of getting this artwork in on time back in the late 80s. But even though it's a little wobbly and shaky in areas, I think it adds to it, and I think it's a really cool thing to go back and look at. And so I'm really excited to unbox this and to show our audiences the first ever Power Comics one-shot release, because we've done our trade paperback. Actually, let me just show the good people that real quick. Check out in our YouTube archives. This is the first ever Power Comics trade paperback release that we partnered with Floating World on. This is Steve McCardle's Vendetta Holy Vindicator series, issues 1 through 4, plus Artillery, and that's now available for pre-order. Also, if you click in the description of this video, another awesome project that we've just been immersing ourselves in the past year and a half. It's 160 pages. Super excited about it. But enough about Steve, enough about Vendetta. Let's talk about Lance Stanton. Our first actual release to hit stores will be this. So thank you so much, Dave, for working on this with us and letting us do it. So here I don't want to cut myself on camera. I have mine ready to go here. Do you have yours out of the box?
I do.
All right, let's show it to the good people. Here we go, and voila, there it is. Awesome. So, Dave, talk to me. What's it like seeing this? Because you haven't had a copy of this in a while, right? I mean, you don't have any copies of this anymore, right? Of the original.
I had 5 or 6 copies of it in with the original art, and sadly the original art I hadn't seen it in 15, 16 years. I thought I had it, but nope. I have not seen this in nearly 20 years.
Wow. So yeah, here is a brand new, fresh, hot off the press. I'm going to take it out of the bag and board here. Look at the Lance Stanton reprint. And how does it look to you? Pretty faithful to the original print?
If I didn't know better, I would swear it was the original at a glance for sure. The only thing that's different is, of course, the price tag. But everything else is as it was.
Let's do a little side by side here. Here's my original copy of the original run. It's a little bit bigger, but I think that's an odd size. I'm not sure what the size of this was, but it looks a little like it was a little odd size, whatever printer you used. But
it was a printer local in Maine. Kind of a small time outfit.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, I do dig the oversize on this, but also the one thing that's cool here you'll notice is obviously the price is different, $150, $6.99 as you mentioned, but very extremely faithful here to the cover. But also take a look at the back. I mean, pretty much the same thing except for we added our new logos, like Power Comics logo. We're not worthy to have our logo on this, and of course Floating World Comics and the barcode. And then I think the thing that I'm most proud about here, Dave, is that Jason Lavian over at Floating World, it was extremely important to him that to make this as faithful as possible, that this be printed on newsprint. Because the original copy here obviously is newsprint from back in the 80s. But this here, I think it wouldn't have felt right seeing this on, a more modern paper stock, a more glossy paper stock, or something heavier. I think it feels super right to see this in newsprint. What do you think?
I would tend to agree. obviously, if somebody wanted to keep it and preserve it, they might want to take steps to do so. But your original seems to have held up quite well.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, the original from 30 plus years ago. I mean, the page quality not faded at all, which is cool. But I think this just makes the issue that much more authentic to its original form in terms of being presented here on newsprint. Super, super happy about that. So do you have any mixed blessings about this coming back out there? Because I know from our interview, looking back at this comic, there are things that you were definitely obviously excited about, which I would imagine a page like this. But, there were also some pages that, you were rushed to complete and things weren't to your liking. How do you feel about this being back out there again?
Well, I tend to be perfectionistic. So, yeah, mistakes. I'm not happy to see them in print, but there were times where I feel like I hit the nail on the head. So it's a mixed bag, just literally. Some panels I really like, and some panels I'm like, yeah, okay. So
I love it.
the bonus pages, which we'll get into, I'm very proud of those because I spent more time and more effort on them because I had the time. Right.
Yeah, we'll definitely get to that for sure. I'm super happy that we were able to include that in this. Of course, these T-shirts are coming. This is not a joke. We did include the original T-shirt ad from the original copy here, or from the original issue. Except for obviously we updated the price to more modern prices, and they are coming soon, either through the Floating World store or through Instagram. If you've seen before, we got some shirts made, some DIY style from our good friends, the Coates brothers, who are fans of the channel. But we're actually going to get these out there so they're available to the Lance Stanton fans out there. But one thing that I was really happy about that we were able to include with this is not only the bonus pages, which we'll get to, but also just a little. I actually wrote with Gabe this little introduction to those bonus pages, which also kind of summarizes the journey of Lance Stanton, the story behind it, because that's always something we're fascinated here with on the channel. And talking to you about that, from our interview we did with you about 6 months ago, I kind of distilled that into this. So I just wanted to kind of read that because I think it's pretty cool. It just kind of summarizes not only just what the bonus pages are, but also the backstory. So Wayward Journeys, of course, love that. And shout out to Colin Noseworthy, who's a good friend of the channel. He helped lay this page out and some other stuff that he did for us on the Vendetta book as well. Colin, thank you so much for your work. All right, so here we go. Published straight into obscurity in 1989, Hammock Publications' hopeful DIY hero, Lance Stanton, only lasted a single issue, which represents the thwarted ambitions of two suburban Maine dreamers, writer-publisher James McNaughton III and artist Dave Bamford. Growing up outside Bangor, Maine, and inspired by the works of Paul Gulacy, I think I have that right. I always tripping up on how to pronounce his name, but Paul Gulacy, I think that's right.
I've heard it Gulacy. I've heard it Gulacy. It's
Gulacy.
Yeah, it's French.
Right, and he's the man behind Master of Kung Fu. I know you love that series. You could definitely see the influence in these pages and in some of the other works that we looked at of yours as well, too. I think that's safe to say, right?
Yeah, I like the heavy darks.
Yeah.
In places. Yep.
Yeah, he's awesome. I love his stuff. So, growing up in outside Bangor, Maine, inspired by the works of Paul Gulacy, and and Jim Steranko, which, again, these shafts and everything and the graphic nature of Steranko's work, I can see the influences hitting Lance Stanton for sure in your work. Bamford grew up a massive comic book fan and took to illustrating his own pages at a very young age. In the mid-'70s, his family relocated to Brooklyn, New York, and a 16-year-old Bamford enrolled in master cartoonist John Buscema's comic art workshop, where he continued honing his craft. Now, that's super fascinating to me to when you told us more about that in our interview, because you detail that actually in the original opening to this book, which we faithfully included here, where you talk about training under John Buscema in his class that he ran in New York, and you did that over a several-week period. And that, to me, jumped out when we found this book originally however many years ago, it was like, oh my God, he trained with John Buscema. But then you stepped away from comics, and that's a really interesting part to the story for me. But I'll get to that. So after graduating high school, Bamford and his family moved back to Maine, now several states away from the comic business epicenter. He decided not to pursue a career in cartooning and instead entered the workforce, had a family, and became a bodybuilder. Is that accurate? Is that an accurate rundown of things?
Well, again, the bodybuilding thing was just more something I took up, so I didn't turn into Jabba the Hutt. But other than that.
But I mean, like, even when we talked to, James McNaughton, he was sort of saying, like, he remembered you being, a super fit guy. I mean, you were ripped, were you not, back then when you made this?
Well, I had some bulk and a flat stomach back then, but yes.
All right.
Basically, I think the bodybuilding was an offshoot of comics because the anatomy and the mechanics of the body fascinated me, and I became my own experiment.
And I would like to believe that, after the John Buscema course, you became a world famous bodybuilder. So I guess we're putting a little
Yeah, I had Schwarzenegger looking over his shoulder. Sure. Yeah. We'll go with that.
Okay, so professional bodybuilder. 13 years later, Bamford entered a comic shop in Maine. So 13 years later, though, that's really important. Like so after leaving comics behind, you take this 13-year break before you come back to it. And here we're encapsulating that. 13 years later, Bamford entered a comic shop in Maine and discovered the locally published Cosmic Stellar Rebellers, which was released by James McNaughton's Hammock Publications. So now James McNaughton, who was childhood friends with Kevin Eastman, the co-creator of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, would self-publish their own DIY comics in high school. When Eastman made it big, he offered his independent comic distributor contacts to McNaughton, which he used in the formation of Hammock. And that blew my mind when I first talked to James McNaughton, that there's a tangential connection here to Kevin Eastman, and obviously with Maine, Kevin being from Maine, but just that Lance Stanton somehow is in the family tree of Kevin Eastman in some way. I think that's really interesting. With the revelation of indie publishing, Bamford's passion was re-engaged. He contacted McNaughton and shared with him his prior illustration portfolio. Shortly after, the two began discussing ideas for a new comic. Lance Stanton, a space soldier ordered on a deadly mission into treacherous wastelands to foil an attack by villainous traitor Philip Friedman. When initial sketches were approved by McNaughton, Lance quickly went into production. However, 13 years away from his craft proved to be an incredible challenge for Bamford, especially with the pressures of a strict distributor deadline. Upon completing the pages, additional financing was needed for printing. Bamford's father stepped in, always a staunch supporter of his son's ambitions to share costs of production. Now, is that accurate?
Yes.
So, after the release of the book, Bamford began work on issue number 2, aiming to polish the areas he felt were rushed and rough in the previous issue. When the distributor sent back hundreds of unsold copies of Lance Stanton and this project was proving to be a financial loss, Bamford grew discouraged and walked away, never completing the second issue. Is that true?
Yes, that's very true. I had to get back to real work, as in making money.
And that's a story we hear a lot on the channel. When we track down, the power comics of back in those days. It was a lot of work and a lot of money to get any of these off the ground back then. And
right.
if
and
it didn't work,
a
lot of time, especially doing it, doing it yourself, and all of that burden, especially financial in your case, with your family and everything, and putting up the money to do this. That's a lot,
Yeah, we had to make up for the loss as well as everything else. So,
wow. Yeah, no, 100%. And now, of course, here we are, 30 some odd years later. In 2021, Power Comics contacted Bamford, and to our amazement, he unearthed the unfinished, never before seen pages of Lance Stanton number 2. We actually first debuted those in our Power Comics Hall of Fame show which blew everybody's freaking mind that there was even a Lance Stanton 2, perhaps, or at least some pages of them. That's amazing. And you found those in your garage. You unearthed those for us. These 6 dialogueless pages depict the epic conflict between Lance and the mega robot menace from the previous issue's cliffhanger, of course, which we see here. After slicing the robot's fingers off, Lance is grabbed by its other hand, and once he is within range, Lance thrusts his axe straight into the eye of the robot, destroying it, but accidentally knocks himself out in the process. From there, the story would have progressed with the female character nursing Lance's wounds and revealing that she is the secret daughter of traitor Philip Friedman. And so I thought it was important to include the context of these pages here, which are presented for the first time in print, of what Lance Stanton number 2 would have looked like. But the most important thing about it for me is the last page of those, which we discuss here in the last paragraph. The 6th page from issue number 2, which is incomplete, marks an exact moment when Bamford quit comics in 1989. A once hopeful dream forever frozen in time. And we're going to get to this, but 31 years later, after we located Bamford, he got the itch again and retaught himself the craft in order to finally finish the page, which is represented here in this printing. So we have both the unfinished from 89, 90, and the finished version from 2022, which is wild. A true testament to the spirit of the DIY artists we celebrate here at Power Comics. And, of course, signed by myself and Gabe, our head researcher. So here it is. The never before in print, first time in print pages of Lance Stanton. What would have been the dialogueless panels, what would have been of Lance Stanton 2. So how is this for you to see this now in print here?
I'm very happy to see those pages in print because obviously it's better for people to see it and enjoy it than to be stuck in a portfolio in a closet.
Right. 100%. Yeah, and it's so cool to see this too, because when we first saw this comic, when we first pulled it out of a dollar bin, God knows where, just never ever would have thought that there would be more to this issue that we loved so much, and to now actually see it here, to be republishing it, to get it back out there, but to actually get a glimpse of what was in store for these characters. And of course, I think this picture is worth 1,000 words to me, just in terms of, the backstory. And obviously there's so much struggle that goes into these Power Comics and the things that we like here. And I think that's just like everything that's encapsulated in this to me. This tells a story of you guys making this book, the fact that there's this unfinished panel. And I think if I remember correctly, I urged you not to finish it, right? In this way, or not to finish the original drawing, right?
At first, I was thinking of finishing the original, making a copy of that as it was. And then I thought, well, I could lightbox this and then take it from there. So that's what I wound up doing. And I think that was the right choice.
Yes. Yeah, because I think there's just something pure about, leaving this the way you left it, but then coming back 30 plus years later. And now let's take a look. Here's the world premiere of the finished version of this very drawing. There it is, which is just amazing to see. So talk me through, now that we got you here, what it was like 31 years later returning to this material and relearning the craft.
Well, I had to buy some paper. I bought a slant board.
Nice.
Some pens, some inks. Just basically starting from scratch. I had a few things left over, but yeah. And I got a light box so I could do the tracing because I wanted it as close to the original as possible. And then once I had that down, I completed the drawing and then inked the whole thing.
It's amazing. And like, how did you find it 30 years later? I mean, because you hadn't drawn much, right, since then?
Yeah, not much at all. Basically, I won't say it's like riding a bicycle. It was just slower.
Right.
But I took my time. And
I mean,
yeah.
I mean, it's great. It turned out so great because you described it to me in our first video we did with you, the interview of what's supposed to happen in this page of like him, this epic, splash here of him driving his retractable staff into the eye of this robot, and then to actually see it. I mean, it's killer. You did a tremendous job. It looks amazing, and it's so cool to have both here. To have a new piece from you in this complete comprehensive edition.
Yeah, I did enjoy doing it, and there were other things that I would have liked to have done, but I figured this was kind of like the cherry on the sundae.
Oh, 100%.
If I was to do anything else in comics, I would probably start in with my Layton character, which we went into during our interview.
I was going to ask. Has that sparked any passion to kind of return back and do some new stories with that character?
I'm doing some drawing. Nothing polished. I mean, I'm sketching and
cool.
Just and I'm giving it a lot of thought, like what direction I'd like to take it in, that sort of thing. And perhaps when this comes out, maybe it'll spark some interest out there. Somebody who might want to collaborate with me. Write or some such thing like that. I find that I can tell a story, but to come up with a story is a different matter altogether.
100%. I know, 100%. Is there any way people should contact you if they're interested in a collaboration or just reaching out for a commission, perhaps?
My email address is tdbamford with the number 2. So that's TDBAMFORD, the numeral 2, at roadrunner.com. And I think that sets a world record for the longest email address. But I hate it passionately, and I've had it for years and years and years.
Amazing.
We'll definitely. I also have a Facebook page, which is wide open for anybody to see.
Oh, okay, great. So I'll link both of those, email and the Facebook, in the description of the video too, if you want to get a hold of Dave and spark up a collaboration or maybe even some sort of commission. I think would be cool too. And also, it's cool here. I just wanted to point out that we did sort of put the. It's cool here because it also notates that the previous page, 1989. Here we're seeing the Lance Stanton Wayward Warrior number 2, page 6. Incomplete, 1989, it says here in the margin, but here it is, the completed 2022. So that's just so cool to see, man. So glad you did that. It does put the cherry on the cake for this edition.
It was an odd experience as well.
Yeah,
going back to it.
I bet. I mean, it's 3 decades.
Trying to get back into the head that I was into my head back then.
Wow, I can't imagine. It's so cool, though. It's so super cool of you to do that. And I think it just completes this. It makes it the definitive Lance Stanton. I mean, that's it. And now it's available to, for everyone, for anyone who appreciates our channel or the work that we cover. I mean, a lot of times when we put a comic, on our channel, it's indie copies that are out there on eBay or Mile High Comics or My Comic Shop. They vanish. And it's impossible to find these unless you get really exorbitantly lucky in a dollar bin, quarter bin somewhere. And a lot of people are interested in wanting to get their own hard copies of these. So that's what we're trying to do with this. We're trying to get them back in the hands of people that want to see them and to try and do it in the most faithful way possible. And I think that Floating World just did an incredible job, and finding the newsprint and getting this in newsprint just makes it that much more killer. And the fact that there's a cool little, page here about the story behind Lance Stanton, and then there's the issue number 2 pages, and this new work that you've done, I think is awesome. And $6.99, man, that's nothing. So definitely get into the description and order your copy today. They're shipping out, I think, June 8th from Floating World and beyond. So I think that's it, man. I'm just super happy with this. I think you're happy with it. I think you're happy with it. Oh,
yes, I am.
Okay.
Sometimes people think that I'm just kind of a salty, moopy kind of guy, but my face just tends to hang. I have RBF. We all know what that means.
Right.
But no, I actually have a sense of humor about the whole thing. Now, I want to thank you guys because years ago, I stumbled across a webpage that absolutely ripped the comic. Just in a very savage, not nice way at all.
Mean-spirited.
Oh yeah, very mean. I remember one line is like, here's another joker with a Sharpie who thinks he can draw comic books. And it's like, wow, that's just unnecessary. But that's the internet. The internet's going to internet.
The internet's going to internet, and it takes a special cilantro gene to appreciate the things that we do here. And I think a lot of people, even like with movies, it's like it has to be polished. It's Steven Spielberg in order to be good. But the things that are rough around the edges, the edges are just more interesting. And I think that's what people here among this channel really celebrate and appreciate.
Sure. It's bad movies can be more entertaining than a highly polished gem
100%.
from Hollywood.
100%. 100%. I even have a hard time calling them bad movies because it's like if it's bad, then how can it but it's good. So it's a hard. There's not good terminology in the English language to describe exactly what it is, why we appreciate the things that we do. But I think for us. This was just such a huge part of when we were trying to figure out what is a power comic, why do we respond to these types of comics. Lance Stanton was like, oh man, it hit the nail on the head. And I'm honored for it to be the first ever, single issue that we're putting back out there, because we're going to do a bunch of these, and this is the first one, and I think it came together beautifully, and I can't wait for people to get their hands on it and to order it. And I also got to throw it in my Comic Clear. I got my Comic Clear clear backing board from our good friends at Comic Clear Supplies. So I'm going to stick it in here now so I can have it on the shelf with the rest of my other Power comics, and I think it's going to look great in there. Yeah, look at that.
Yeah,
right?
That's
perfect.
That is a very nifty item.
Right? Yeah, I think it makes it look perfect. So shout out to Comic Clear Supplies. Definitely order yours through them. They're our good buddies. But I think that's going to do it, Dave. Thank you so much for joining me and unboxing this and taking a peek at it. And glad to hear you're stoked with it. And let us know what you guys think. Definitely when you get yours in hand and you've ordered them and they ship out to you, let us know your feedback as well, because this is just the beginning. There's going to be a lot more of these to come.
Alrighty.
All right, everybody. Have a good rest of your week, and we will see you next time. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.